This morning at 9:03 a.m. Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We could move down in our agenda. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions?
We have three additions to the agenda. The first, under administration, G4.2, we're going to add land acknowledgement to talk about putting that on our council agendas. G4.3, sorry, yeah, G4.3. And under G4.4, we're going to discuss the CAO recruitment process.
Okay.
And then we do have a closed session under K, closed session item. Land acknowledgement. I've had a request to bring that up at the council meeting to talk about land acknowledgement.
And the closed session will be FOIP Section 19 confidential evaluations.
Yes.
Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? John?
I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. John has moved to adopt the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving down, adoption of the minutes. Before you have your county council meeting minutes from the December 15th, 2022 meeting. Any errors or omissions? Claus?
I'll move the agenda, the minutes of the council meeting of December 15th as presented.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved for the adoption of the county council meeting minutes from the December 15th, 2022 meeting. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I should have said earlier as well, sorry, Councillor Zeenstra indicated that he will be running a little bit late, but he will be joining us. And also, I should acknowledge that today is CAO Ann Mitchell's last meeting. So thank you, Chief Mitchell. We will address that a little bit later in the agenda, but thank you. We can move down then. We do have a 10 o'clock time commitment. We have a public hearing scheduled for 10 o'clock. Until then, why don't we move down to our department reports, G1, Community Services. And we will start with G1.1, Bylaw 22-021, Road Closure, Sale, and Consolidation, first reading. And with that, I will throw to our Supervisor of Planning and Development, Hilary Jansen. Good morning, Hilary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. Happy New Year. Since I haven't seen any of you yet. This road closure application is located just adjacent to the Green Prairie International Hay Plant Facility. In discussions with Green Prairie International, in looking at their site and their recent acquisition of a parcel just directly to the east, you'll notice on the map here they obviously have their big site here, but they've also purchased the smaller acreage that used to be a residential parcel directly to the east. So with that, we had further discussions on their land use, their stormwater management, and it was determined that the road that currently is on the southern boundary of their property was likely not required as a county road any longer. From what I understand from the history of this, which was well before my time here at the county, but when Highway 3 was twinned, Alberta Transportation required that service roads be installed in this particular area, both on the north and south side of the roads. The north side to provide access to that particular acreage that Green Prairie has now purchased. Green Prairie actually has been maintaining this particular portion of road. You can see it's somewhat, it's semi-developed, as I would call it. I think it's a paved surface for about 3/4 of it. And they would like to purchase that in order to consolidate it into their parcel so that they can maintain the maintenance on that, and also it will facilitate some upgrades to their stormwater management, as there would be an encroachment issue within the county's right-of-way as it stands today. After discussions with Alberta Transportation, it was determined that they had no concerns with regards to this service road being closed. And as such, the applicant has, they put in an application to close and consolidate this portion of road. So with that, I would recommend that County Council approve first reading of this bylaw, after which administration will determine the best date for a public hearing and also do the referral process, which is required for a road closure. It's a little bit different than our other bylaws in the county. With that, I will put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. I'd open up to council. Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like on the photo part there, it says the east property. Is that also from Green Prairie?
Yes, so Green Prairie has now purchased that eastern property.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the event that that property, that Green Prairie disposes of that property at a later date, would access become a problem for it then?
Thank you, Councillor Kerbers, through the chair. So with regards to that parcel, they've actually been using that, they've converted that into their stormwater management system. That's now contains their ponds for their entire parcel. And part of the road closure process would be that all those parcels that we can consolidate together there will be no standalone parcel at the end once this road closure is done. So access will not be an issue.
Any other questions? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has the county invested any money into that road or right-of-way?
Thank you, Councillor Van Esten, through the chair. No, we have not invested any money since it was created back in 1995.
John?
Thank you. Given that this looks like a fairly straightforward and this is first reading, I'd like to move that bylaw 22-021 be read a first time.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention one thing just for council's information. The applicant is also requesting, I don't know if you noted in their letter, they are asking that the land cost be waived to the road purchase. So typically in a road closure, they actually purchase the right-of-way from the county. But because this was a requirement of Alberta Transportation back in 1995, they have requested that they have request that there would be no cost or an exchange of $1 for this road.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So John has, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that in mind, did they own the property when that roadway had to come in, and did they lose land at that time? If they did Alberta Transportation buy it off of them?
So when I talked to Alberta Transportation, so Green Prairie was in fact there when the road was taken as road right-of-way. The Alberta Transportation did not pay them for that particular road right-of-way, from what I understand. Their records show that there was no fee, like no cost for purchasing it from them. I think it was part of a land deal that they got part of it paved, but they gave over the land without any compensation.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if there was a exchange of services and for the land, then in a sense, they actually did get paid for it, but they didn't get paid in monetary funds.
Yeah, there's really no records back then stating what actually happened. It's just that this road was dedicated. There was no compensation for the land. There wasn't, I mean, I'm somewhat making an assumption that the road was put in by Alberta Transportation, the service road portion.
So and just to follow up on that, these are all things that we can have further discussions on during or after the public hearing and second and third reading, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, through the chair, we could probably, I will bring it up again during the public hearing, at which time probably a recommendation coming out of that public hearing would advise us to whether or not council agrees with not having any fees associated with the purchase of the land at that time.
Thank you, Hillary. John has moved first reading of bylaw 22-021. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Why don't we just have a quick pause here for a second? We're having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
We'll move down in our agenda. G1.2, fire service response fees waiver request analysis. And we have Byron Fraser, our manager of fire services. Good morning, Byron.
Good day, council. So today I'm bringing forth to you another fee-for-service waiver. Just a recoup on December 1st council meeting. We had Green Prairie come and present to you guys about their concerns and stuff with our incident and invoicing with them. They presented wanted a reduction in fire services as of the unique circumstances that they had. So you guys had tasked me to review and come up with some options. We did have multiple conversations with the city and Green Prairie. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I ran up here. Was not. They had said that their response was not appropriate, and that the city did not handle it properly, and therefore our invoicing was incorrect. We conducted concluded that the invoice should have only been $138,935 from the city, where it was $267,710. So options I'm presenting forward to you today is option 1, deny the request to reduce the $330,000 fire response invoice that we had already reduced prior to even sending out an invoice, just with me meeting with the city and our staff to try to come up with more appropriate. Pros with that is we would collect the full amount of what we determined was the invoice that was sent to the property owner. The cons, the appellant would have to pay $80,000 above what was covered by insurance, because if he mentioned that day $250,000 was covered by insurance. Option 2, reduce the invoice to $305,000. Pros for us, it would partially satisfy his request. Plus it would, for us, we would not lose any money that we paid out for that incident. So it would kind of be a break-even scenario for us. The cons, the appellant would still have to pay $55,000 more than his insurance covered. And another con for us is, again, like the last situation, is we don't get any of that cost recovery of our contracted services throughout the year. We would just be what we paid out for that incident, nothing recovered. Option 3 would be to reduce it to the $250,000 asked by the Green Prairie, because that's the amount that was covered by insurance. Pros is he would be happy. Cons is we would forgo $80,000 in revenue to offset costs. Financial impact, the county will recover all paid out costs, but would forgo the collection of revenue that is used to offset the fire services operational budget, and that is based on my recommendation of option 2, where at least recovered the dollar amount that we paid out. So I leave it with you guys to go from here.
Thank you, Byron. I'll open up for questions. Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Byron, could you go back to where you started out from?
Yep.
You said that the build cost from what the city had and what you estimated at, there was about $100,000 difference? So what did you actually end up having to pay the city, or who is,
Yep. What we ended up paying the city, and just finding their invoice here, was $293,000. Their original invoice was, dang it, didn't have it with me, 330 was our invoice sent. So how to get down to, before we even sent them an invoice, for the first 8 hours, we charged our normal rates that are included to recover the first 8 hours of the city contract. We took that out right off the bat to send to Green Prairie and just billed for theirs, plus Coaldale's response and stuff like that. Does that answer?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the difference was.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's, so basically, right off the bat, just because of me analyzing the whole situation, we took off our recovery portion right off the bat.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize, Byron, I'm still a little bit confused in terms of why we would be, where the recommendation for 303 came from if the amount that we actually paid out over and above our normal contract was 293.
That was just to the city, that 293. Then we paid for rental fees for lights and stuff like that. We had a couple other outside resources that had an invoice that sent to us.
Other questions? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the report, we have the letter that I believe this was between Lethbridge County and the city, and there's a few discrepancies of what the county didn't agree with the city. Has most of that been resolved? Has all of it been resolved, or where are we at on that?
Through the chair. To be totally honest, we decided to kind of put it to bed. It was a long process. The argument from the city was that they had a continuous call for 5 days, where it created 3 different incidents in all the reporting system, and without getting into too many details of they left, we argued that should be a new call when they went back, things like that. We kind of, after 6-8 months of arguing with the city,
And trying to get meetings on the docket, yes.
yeah, and trying to meet with them to figure it out, we just finally, if we can recoup our costs, was kind of the final, you know what, this is wasting a lot of our time on something they're obviously not going to go to unless we went to court over it. So if that answers.
That does, thank you.
And I would have to say, sorry, through you, Chair, I would have to say too, for the sake of the relationship, we decided to walk away.
That's a good point, yeah.
Other questions? Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The thing is, it's an outrageous billing, the way they do the billing or whatever, and are we gonna have talks with these emergency services from the city of Lethbridge that, hey, we gotta be within reasons? And the big thing for me is, like if the business find out or see this, what they could be up against for emergency services being in the county down there, that's might deter them from coming to again, because in my eyes, it's outrageous.
Yeah, I agree. I was not in this position during this incident, so I was kind of trying to help clean it up. As of now, again, with my job description and stuff, hoping to eliminate this kind of stuff and, have representative from the county to help make sure this doesn't happen again in lots of situations. I did do an analysis on that call, and I figured if it would have been split into the 3 calls like they said, because the first 8 hours they couldn't bill us for, and then they billed us for the 4 days after. If they would have did it like it showed in the records management system, it would only been a $118,000 bill. So, yeah, with me here, I'm hoping we definitely remedy these types of situations. You know, the city's cost is more than a lot of our rural ones too, hence why some of the contract changes have come into play. Yeah, unfortunately I wasn't here. Whether I could have helped it or not at the time, I can't speak to that, but hopefully in the future we mitigate that.
Any other questions? Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as we said, it was outrageous the way it went, and we all know that the relationship that we have wasn't that great. And you know, with Byron coming up into the picture right now, that you're hired for this kind of stuff, I hope this kind of stuff does not ever happen again, because we can't justify that to the rest of our ratepayers, that we're paying this kind of a ridiculous amount of money for that. It was, So with that, I'll recommend that the June 21 Green Prairie fire invoice be reduced to an amount that recoups at all costs paid out, but does not include potential foregone revenue at $305,367.56.
Thank you, Claus. Any further discussion? If not, Claus has moved the recommendation that the June 2021 Green Prairie Fire invoice be reduced to an amount that recoups all costs paid out, but does not include potential foregone revenue, $305,367.56. Any further discussion? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recognize how we got to that dollar amount. I think you did great work in coming up with that. It does not recognize our fault in not having better contracts set up ahead of time. And I don't think it acknowledges our, I don't know if you'd call errors and omissions in setting up fire services. And so I am more inclined to go towards the $250,000 to recognize, or even, yeah, the $250,000 to recognize where we faulted, that's a tough word on it, but where we did not have our due diligence done to ensure something like this doesn't happen. And that's not putting blame on anyone in how it came together. That's just post-analysis to recognize that.
Thank you, Eric. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has, other than just oral reporting, has Green Prairie given us any documentation to confirm the $250,000 amount covered under insurance?
Not that I've seen. It was based on, I think I had it in an email, possibly at one point, and then he mentioned it in council.
But they haven't provided any solid
Not that I've
documentation
seen.
to that. Okay.
Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I partially agree with what Eric said, but I think that, knowing what they're insured for, I kind of think they're kind of lacking on the amount that they have insured for fire, and I think that is probably, that's on their side. So with that, I think the motion that was brought forward should stand.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the recommendation. Any further discussion? Not, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Byron.
Thanks, guys.
Move down in our agenda, G2 Corporate Services, G2.1, Bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our intern, municipal intern Jeremy Vandermeulen will be presenting the schedule of fees.
Morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
How are you today?
Good, how about you?
Good, thank you.
Today I will be presenting the amendments to the schedule of fee bylaw. With that, they are attached to the document. Administration's recommendation is to pass all 3 readings today. All fees have been reviewed by each department and administration adjusted them accordingly. Fees are comparable to neighboring municipalities and costs for services are covered. There are some minor wording changes throughout the document, along with deletion of refundable charges under section D, item 3 to 7, and then an increase of $1 per meter for dust control and $2 per meter over 200 meters in section D, item 12. And changes for dust control are based on discussions during council deliberations. And I will defer to Mr. Wixon to provide further details on these changes.
Thank you very much. The only other addition, and this came through our ASB review of fees, is in section E, which is on page 10 of this item right now, was number 7, the Brilliant Drills, changing that fee structure to $210 or $7 per acre, as well as item number 8, the Straw Shredder and Straw Incorporator, just eliminating that completely because we no longer operate that piece of equipment.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. So the change for the Brilliant Drills is not in this
It's
document?
it's not included in here right now.
Oh. So it's a,
It would be an amendment to this.
yeah, but it's still at the old rate. Okay.
So you're proposing that amendment then, Jeremy?
Yes, I'm proposing an
Okay.
amendment to
Okay.
this, section E, number 7, change the Brilliant Drill charge-out fee to $210 minimum,
Okay.
or $7 per acre, and eliminating E, item number 8, the straw shredder. That's a
Thank you.
tongue twister.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. So on page, of course, I lost, page 9, under D4, and then when you go to the top of page 10, D5, they're both the same, aren't they?
Do you consider them separate? No. So I'm not sure why they were separated, to be honest. A water, any kind of pipeline crossing would essentially fall under the same. It is sometimes specific to basically say to separate it between whether that be, and lots of times when we're talking about pipelines, pipeline specifically, we're talking about an oil and gas agreement versus a water or sewer line crossing, which would be considered more of a irrigation use or even county use. That would be my inference of what the historical representation of that is. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? John?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, be read a first time.
Should we say as amended?
Oh. Yes, as amended, my apologies.
No, that's fine.
I had that in my notes, I just didn't finish it, so.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, be read a first time as amended. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, as amended, be read a second time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as January 1st, 2023, be read a second time as amended. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, you already amended on the first reading, so at the
Thank you.
second meeting, you don't have to say as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, we'll strike that then. Move that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, be read a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I'd like to proceed to third reading. Clause?
I'll move that, that council consider reading bylaw 21-020, schedule fees at third time.
Thank you, Clause. Clause is, oh, sorry, Jeremy.
I think that's the wrong one.
Oh, it should be 23. I'll correct that for you. Yeah. Clause has moved that council considering reading bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees for a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And third reading. John?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, be read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-001, schedule of fees to be effective as of January 1st, 2023, be read a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Moving down on our agenda to G3, Municipal Services. G3.1, paved road conversion analysis. And I believe this is Devin Teely, our Manager of Infrastructure. Good morning, Devin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. So I've got a 20-year life cycle analysis on some of our paved roads. You will be somewhat familiar with this analysis because I did provide some of this information last fall, but we'll just kind of go through, I'll summarize the document for you and kind of go through what we've developed here. So to better understand the financial implications of reverting some paved roads to gravel or cement stabilized, Cole completed a 20-year life cycle analysis. The analysis compared the overall 20-year cost of 3 different surfacing options. These included rebuilding to a paved standard, cement stabilization, and converting to a gravel road. The attached document contains 4 roads which we did the analysis on. The first one was Old Highway 23 and the Westview Road, which is just west of the city of Lethbridge and kind of goes by the Palliser School. The second was Township Road 10-4, which is known as the Taquita Farms Road. That's right by the Nolan Hill Greater Camp. And the third was the Sundial Road by the Turin Colony, and then Range Road 22-5, which is the CPR Road just northwest of Colehurst. So the first one in the analysis is the CPR Road. I did bring this to you last fall, and council did approve to revert it to gravel, so I don't have to go through that one in too much detail. 1.2 kilometers in length. To convert it to gravel, over 20 years was $176,000. To cement stabilize it over 20 years is $477,000, and then to rebuild to an asphalt standard was about $1.245 million. And council did approve that last fall to convert to gravel. A portion of it was done, and then they're going to finish it up this spring, from what I understand. The second one, which we talked about during our budget deliberations, was the Westview Road / Old Highway 23. That road is 11.4 kilometers in length. In the budget, we do have the portion of that road from the highway to the Palliser School slated to be rebuilt, but from there on is not included in the budget and is included in this analysis. So that's 11.4 kilometers in length from the Palliser School to the Highway 519, I guess that would be. So the initial cost, the cost over 20 years to convert that roadway to gravel is about $1.6 million. To cement stabilize it is about almost $4.5 million. And then for asphalt is almost $6.9 million on that portion of road. If I'm going too fast, please If I need to slow down, let me know, or if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. The third road that we analyzed was the Sundial Road. As I said before, near the Turin Hutterite Colony, that's about 10.8 kilometers in length. The initial, or the 20-year cost to convert it to gravel is about 1.38 million. Cement stabilized is 3.7, and asphalt is about 6.74 million. And then finally, the last road we analyzed is the Township Road 10-4, or the Taquita Farms Road. That used to be the old river crossing for the provincial highway there, and it got turned over to the county. It's about 0.9 kilometers in length. There are a few residents at the bottom of that hill. To convert that one to gravel, 20-year cost is about $125,000. To convert it to cement stabilized is about $336,000, and then to replace with asphalt is about $550,000. So with that,
Devin?
pardon?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last option, is that per mile, or we're getting quite a few miles done? Oh, sorry, 0.9 kilometers. Other question though, the asphalt surface, how do we have an annual cost that is that high? Or is that replacement cost annualized backwards?
So your average annual cost would be basically your initial construction cost plus maintenance over those 20 years divided by 20. So it includes your initial construction cost, which is probably why it seems high per year. Yeah.
Okay.
Claus?
The Taquita Road, you're referring to the one, the portion that's south of the river, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because there's still a little portion there north of the river.
There is, yeah. You can kind of pick out the trail. Yeah,
Yeah,
you bet.
yeah.
Okay, so with that, like I said, we did bring some of this information to you last fall, but we wanted to give you the full comprehensive report, so you had it all in front of you. This is for informational purposes, and as we go through future budget cycles, we will bring some of these roads forward for future consideration.
Thank you, Devin. Any other questions from council? John?
Just a comment. Thank you very much, Devin, for this information. It's greatly appreciated. I think we would be remiss in not making it known that sometimes it's not necessarily about the cost of things. It is about the quality of life of our ratepayers, and that's something that we as council have to take into consideration, that these people have properties on there, purchase properties, and possibly at a premium because it was on a hard surface road. And I think we have to look very long and hard about making any changes to that, because that does have a significant impact on the quality of life of the ratepayers along those roads.
Claus?
With that said, John, I think that the option is there too for the cement stabilization one there, so that's also a hard surface one, the choice that we have to take, could take.
Yeah, thank you for that, Klaus. I 100% agree that there are options. I mean, it is, no matter what we look at, there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. My only comment was sometimes we have to look beyond the financial aspect of it and realize that, you know, we have a duty to the ratepayers along these roads to make sure that we do what's best to maintain their lifestyles too, and something that they've had along the way. So yeah, I appreciate that there are options that maybe are necessarily in the middle, and that's something we can discuss.
Thank you, John. Any other comments, questions of Devin? Go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think I heard you correct on that Sundial Road. To rip it up, to bring it to gravel is gonna be what million?
I will just go back to that page, Councillor Zeenstra. To put it back to gravel, is that the number you're requesting?
Yeah, you had a number down there.
Over 20 years is 1.38 million. The initial conversion, because it is almost 11 kilometers, is 862,000. That 20-year cost, which includes the initial conversion plus maintenance over 20 years, is 1.38 million. Yeah.
So what, if I may, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, so if you look at that kind of a number down there, you know, it's in the millions down there. And if you figure on the upkeep on the Sundial Road, I know what it has been up to this date, but I think, you know, and just, John, he said it down there. We gotta look at certain quality of life too. That road has been there since 1972, I believe. And I go on that Sundial Road quite often, and I believe it has a good base. And it does need regular maintenance, but if you look at, you know, over 20 years to have it back into gravel and the kind of money you gotta spend, I think if you take a little portion of that on a yearly basis, you can keep maintaining that road pretty good and leave it there. And just like John said, we gotta think of certain quality of life for the residents too.
Thanks, Morris.
And it's that one, and then the CP road, that's, you know, how I felt about that one being ripped up because of the type of businesses we have along that road, especially CP down there, you know, like, I would have liked to see down there, you know, or somebody that brought it up down there, that we do hard surface that road again because of the type of businesses we have. You know, we do it with the business parks down there, and the reasons we do, because we want to attract the business and want to keep them down there. Well, what we're doing with the CP road, that's the opposite, and I think somewhat we're obligated to do more than gravel for that stretch down there. That's my points.
Thanks, Morris. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Morris, you did bring up an interesting point. Would it be possible to say, like those roads like Morris mentioned that are built in the 70s or even the early 80s, how much it cost to maintain them to present date? So did we actually have any savings, or were they cost prohibitive roads at the end of the day? Like what I'm saying is, if they were gravel, how much did it cost to maintain them versus being a cold mix road? Do we actually save any money in the last 30 years by having them hard surfaced? Or is that something that you would?
It's unfortunately information we don't have, because those maintenance activities weren't tracked to that detail. Over the course of 30 years, there was a general, let's say, patching budget, and they went out and did all the roads, and they didn't say we spent 50 grand on this road this year and 70,000 on it. It wasn't tracked in that manner. That is being more tracked now, so going forward we'll have better data to support that, but previously we didn't have that information.
Claus and then John, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with this, what we're doing here right now, are we deciding what we're going to be doing with these roads, or are we just taking this for information?
Information.
Correct.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to sort of ask a question of Councillor Hickey, and I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking that, you know, because these were hard surface 30 years ago, that there was a potential savings of maintaining the road over the last 30 years that isn't factored into this?
Yeah, I'm basically saying if it was hard surfaced or cold mixed or whatever the case, and it cost X number of dollars a year, what did that compare to if it was a gravel road? Or did we save any money by having them? Because for years we didn't touch them. So did we save any money?
Right. So
how does their cost work out that way in history?
Yeah.
And we know what the cost moving forward is.
Right.
I'm just wondering.
But logically speaking, because it was hard surface for 30 years and not touched for 30 years, there should have been a pretty significant savings that has been deferred to now. Yeah.
Any other questions of Devin? Thank you very much, Devin. Oh, sorry, do you have something else? Oh, do you want to? We don't have to if you don't want. That's fine. Yeah. Thanks, Devin. I think you obviously appreciate the report. I think it's important that we have some data to have during our decision-making process. But I think as everyone that spoke kind of brought up, it brings up a lot of other things besides just the financials and the numbers. You know, I think something that we've talked about in the past when having these similar discussions is about those definitions. When we talk about hard surfaced, asphalt, cold mix, what we're actually talking about, dust-free, hard surfaces. So I think it's important that we're clear on what those definitions are. Level of service, I think it was quality of life was said, but I would say level of service, what level of service we're providing. We have previously provided and what council would like to provide moving forward. And as well, I would acknowledge that with that level of service, at the end of the day, that burden is borne by the county as a whole. It's not just those individual ratepayers, so another consideration as well, but among others. But I appreciate the report and look forward to having these discussions moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you.
We have about 10 minutes until our just a little more than 10 minutes till our public hearing. So why don't we recess our meeting for now, and we'll re-adjourn at 10 a.m. For our public hearing. Thank you, everyone. We'll call the meeting back to order at 10 o'clock this morning. Moving down in our agenda, item E, public hearings. We have a public hearing for bylaw 22-019. With that, I would recess the public meeting and ask for a motion. Oh, sorry. I'll recess the public meeting, and we are here for public hearing bylaw 22-019 to redesignate a portion of Plan 0210172, Block 2, Lot 1 in the southeast 61020 west of the 4th from rural agriculture to grouped country residential. I would ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Lauren?
I would make a motion to open public hearing for bylaw 22-019.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved to open the public hearing for bylaw 22-019. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act as amended. Public hearing is being live streamed via the county's YouTube page. And with that, I would declare that public hearing for bylaw 22-019 is now officially open. I will now ask the Supervisor of Planning and Development to review the nature of the hearing and provide an overview of what is being proposed. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. With regards to bylaw 22-019, an application was made to the county to redesignate Plan 0210172, Block 2, Lot 1 in the southeast 61020 west of the 4th from rural agriculture to group country residential. The intent of the application is to allow for the future subdivision and development of this parcel for country residential use. And the applicant has provided in their application their proposed subdivision plan along with the details with regards to service provision for this particular parcel. They intend to just subdivide off, or their intention is to subdivide off the most eastern 2 acres of the parcel, which you can see on the screen here, is a small undeveloped area of the parcel. The remainder of the parcel is includes a pond, a house, and various accessory buildings, and obviously a quite extensive tree and shelter belt area around that particular residence. The application has been circulated to the county departments and all external agencies for review. We did receive comments from Fortis, TELUS, Alberta Transportation, and the St. Mary River Irrigation District, and no concerns were expressed with regards to the proposed bylaw by any of those agencies. The application was also advertised in the Sunny South News and sent out to the adjacent landowners and affected landowners with regards to the application. I did receive 2 phone calls from adjacent landowners just confirming the location and the type of zoning that was being requested. After discussions with them, those 2 callers did not have any concerns with regards to the proposed rezoning or the subdivision, future subdivision that would proceed if the application were approved. The Planning and Development Department completed a review of the proposed redesignation and determined that it complies with the policies of the county's municipal development plan, being bylaw 22-001, and the residential policies contained within it, and also with the group country residential land use strategy. In that the lands are considered poor non-agricultural lands, that being that they're less than 20 acres in size. The proposed subdivision would not fragment high-quality agricultural land, as it is existing acreage and would be turned into 2 acreages. There are no constraints or conflicts with adjacent land uses. There are no confined feeding operations in proximity to the parcel, nor any noxious or hazardous uses in proximity to the proposed area or and proposed subdivision. And the future subdivision is small scale and would not require any additional infrastructure to support the development, which is one of our key siting criteria included within both the group country residential land use study and the municipal development plan. As mentioned, this bylaw was advertised. It was advertised in December on the December 25th and 27th editions of the Sunny South News. With that, the administration has recommended to move forward with 2nd and 3rd reading of this bylaw. And I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. This is council's opportunity to receive input from the public. Those making presentations are asked to state their name and review their points. We ask that you refrain from asking questions to council. The intention of the public hearing is not to debate or defend the contents of the bylaw or the position which individual councilors may have on the bylaw. Questions asked of a councilor by a presenter may be ruled out of order. Presentations to council will start with the applicant who has made the submission, followed by any other persons wishing to comment on the proposal. Please keep your comments to the point. After each speaker, members of council will be permitted to ask questions of the presenter to clarify any details. No debating or questions from the floor will be allowed. With that, I would ask is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw? Again, is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw? And a third time, is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw? If there is nothing further, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Lauren? Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has made the motion to close the public hearing for bylaw 22-019. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. With that, we can resume our public meeting. And before you do have a recommendation to consider second and third reading. Are there any questions? Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Reeve Campbell. Just based on the background information that we've received in the discussion, or that we've seen here and presented to us, I'd like to move that bylaw 22-019 be read a second time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the recommendation that bylaw 22-019 be read a second time. Is there any discussion? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for Hillary. Does this need an area structure plan? Because there are quite a few residents there.
Thank you,
Or
Mr.
is that
Chair.
at a different stage? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through to Councillor Hickey. With regards to this particular plan, because it's there's roads that divide up the acreages to the south and also to the east, it was determined that we would not need an area structure plan because they're just subdividing. They gain access off of an existing county road. The services are readily available, so no area structure plan was deemed to be required for this particular application.
Thank you, Hillary. Any further questions or discussion? Mark has moved the recommendation that bylaw 22-019 be read a second time. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And third reading? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 22-019 be read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 22-019 be read for a third time. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is also carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Moving back to our agenda, we can move down to item G 3.2, bylaw 23-004, the 2023 utility rate bylaw. Morning, Jeremy. How are you this morning?
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning to council as well. So today I have to go over similar to the schedule of fees, the one thing we have separated out from the schedule of fees is the utility rate bylaw. So this covers off on all of our water, wastewater, waste disposal fees that are essentially incurred and that we bill out. So for the utilities budget, this is a cost recovery budget is the intention of the budget. The fees and services are contained within the annual operating budget, but this is basically the intention of the utilities is essentially to be revenue or to be neutral at the end of the day, full cost recovery. So through the annual budget process, the utility rates are reviewed and adjusted to reflect any anticipated increases for the upcoming year and to ensure cost recovery of the operations is maintained. Any increases that have been determined by administration are included within the budget and are presented to council during budget deliberations for implementation in the coming year. So this is a follow-up essentially on what was proposed in the initial budget. When considering the utility rate changes, the county follows any increases considered by the city of Lethbridge as they are our primary water supplier to all of our hamlets as well as the co-ops and so on. And because this is where our primary purchasing. The city of Lethbridge has set a target for 2023 of a 2% increase to their own utility rates. So their charge for water has gone up by 2%. And that is typically year to year is what we find out is we'll get a notification, or I will check with the city of Lethbridge representatives to see what their proposed increase is going to be in their budget, and that's what we essentially implement into our budget, as well as looking at some of our other additional costs. So all these increases have been applied across the board on our bylaw for county water rates. So what I have in front of you is the utility rate bylaw. As I've done some extensive amendments to this. Back in February, I had the supervisor of utilities retired, and then I took this on myself to basically go over this bylaw and to clean up all the wording in it, as well as clean up some of the pieces that are contained within as far as rates. And so there is, across the board on this, you'll see some highlight portions, but for the majority, except for a few areas, which I will highlight here in a minute, there is essentially a 2% increase across the board on all these different rates. So just some general background information. In 2022, the utility rate bylaw Schedule A was passed, which encompasses the majority of the water, wastewater, and solid waste services. Schedule B is specific just to the RAVE subdivision, and this is essentially a rate table that was established back in 2015 and is a frontage charge essentially for stormwater that doesn't expire until 2035. The utility rates are reviewed annually as part of the budget process. This presentation would essentially be a further approval of the annual budget that was passed back in December. So a couple of the proposed changes, like I said, there's the 2% increase across the board on the water and wastewater rates. Garbage rates. So we have an agreement with the town of Colehurst that does our residential pickups in Diamond City, Fairview, Shaughnessy, and a couple other locations. Those are all specified within the utility bylaw. They have expressed to us that they're increasing their rate by 5%, and that was actually, last year they increased it by 5% as well, though we didn't receive a notification, and this would essentially be an increase to that solid waste disposal fee. The water charge for commercial users is the second part another part I want to highlight. This has a capital replacement surcharge portion in it that had not been increased for several years, and it was indexed accordingly to reflect current costs. This is primarily the McCain's water line and the Coaldale water line. During our water commission meeting for the water commission, which consists of Lethbridge County and the town of Coaldale, there was a 5% capital increase that was put onto the fees that are essentially charged through there. So you'll see a little bit larger increase on that. It's going from 23 cents up to 26 cents. Now, some of that is also an indication of we're looking at what this long-term capital recovery essentially needs to be. McCain's alone consumes about last year it was 1.1 million cubes of water. So the capital recovery portion on that charge essentially ends up being just a little bit south of $300,000 per year is essentially on a capital recovery cost we're putting onto that pipeline. The other portion that I want to highlight, and there is a slight amendment within the utilities bylaw in a portion that I wanted to just clarify as well. So the Iron Springs Water Association is without a service agreement. So the North and the South Water Co-ops we both have service agreements with, and they pay essentially a monthly flat fee that we have within an existing service agreement contract that expires within 3 years. Iron Springs Water Association was found to be operating, they're a co-op. They're essentially a co-op. They've been operating without a service agreement for a considerable amount of time, and then I'm proposing a monthly flat fee essentially to be instituted within the bylaw, or this is an item for discussion, because this could be something that I could still go back to the Water Association and get a service agreement with them. I put a $1,000 flat fee in there, and that is based off of they've got approximately 26 users. Our standard cost that we charge right now for other hamlets, we have a residential flat fee that's proposed for 2023 of $44. So this essentially accounts for what those 26 residents are. And the amendment portion that I didn't include that needs to be included in this is it should say under that item, it should say $1,000 flat fee plus $1.65 per cube for water consumption. Any questions on that?
Morris, Eric, and Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that Iron Springs one, and that's been run by the Iron Springs Association or whatever they call it. Don't they charge per household so much already? And now you're proposing another $1,000 a month on top of that.
I don't know all the specifics. I don't know all the specifics. From what I've been relayed by the association, is they basically charge out some kind of flat fee essentially to their residents. What I found in my review portion, though, as much as we are providing all these other services, the only thing that we were actually charging them for was the $1.65, or last year was $1.62 per cube. So we were only charging them for the water consumption versus all of our other hamlets were receiving the monthly residential flat fee.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the Iron Springs Association, what investment do we have into there, and what is our strategic replacement plan? If we're charging this, we have to be prepared to offer something, and how has it got to where it is?
So the history of the Iron Springs Water Co-op is it was started, Morris would probably know more on this item than I would. It's a historical water co-op. Basically, we do not own any of the capital infrastructure within that water co-op. It is one of the rarities within all of our hamlets. All of our other hamlets, the county is the owner-operator of all of the infrastructure. In specific to the Iron Springs Water Co-op, their water lines are all owned or were installed and all owned by the co-op.
So why would we be billing them capital fee?
Well, that is why there is a slight reduction essentially in that. And this is, like it is set at $44. I mean, if you times that by the 26 residents, it's over $1,000 per month. So we're looking at the operating cost. When I did an operating cost evaluation of this, the operating cost per year was roughly just under $12,000. And that's what I based that off of. So that's for our water operators, our licensed water operators, to go in to do all of their basic standard testing and so on.
Did we just start testing here, or has that been historically we've been testing at no charge?
We have been doing it the whole time, and the only thing we've been charging for is the cost of water. So this is very much a discovery portion that I found, which is something that we were not getting full cost recovery from.
Klaus and then John.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on that one, because it's kind of a weird situation that went on there. I think with the Iron Spring Water Association, that we discovered that they had an association there, and maybe it's a difficult question, like how did we come about finding out that they did have their own association, and that because the costs were always still there for us, and we paid them all the time, but it was not discovered that it went through them, and because everything is always went that way, why do we have to make changes in that while it was, and I know we want to recover some of our costs that we were paying anyway, right?
Correct.
I'll take that. Through the chair. Sometimes through this process, when there's longtime employees and there's changes in staffing, things come to light. And as soon as it was come to light, the analysis was done, and we're trying to correct it moving forward.
I had to ask, sorry.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many residents are on that with Iron Springs?
Currently, as of I took the 2016 census information, there was 26 residences.
So that would work out to just a little over $38 per resident. How does that compare with other hamlets in terms of flat fees that residents are paying?
So all of our other hamlets are at 44. Will be at 44.24. Is essentially what's proposed in this bylaw. So there is quite a bit there's a $6 difference essentially on that monthly flat fee.
Okay, so it is an increase, but it's not, it's still less than what it would be if they were on the same system as the rest of the hamlets.
Correct. And part of that is I don't have good enough numbers of analysis to essentially say firmly what that rate should be for that, because there was a question on the capital recovery, because we are not, I mean, technically that hamlet, the capital, we do not own in Iron Springs.
In that regard, what happens if there is a water break there?
That has been a curiosity question that I had and I posed to the co-op, because in order to actually respond to a water break of any form, you would actually have to have a certified licensed water operator on site. Now, previously, prior to going back in history, they had the previous supervisor of utilities acted as their licensed operator for water breaks.
So essentially, what?
So essentially, if they do have a water line break, it's called a contravention, and they would have to contract us to come in and to oversee that, because they no longer have a licensed operator.
Good, John? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you,
And then
Mr. Chair. So they have a dual water system, don't they? Don't they have SMRT or LNID water for irrigating their lawns and stuff like that?
They very well might. They are uses a considerable amount of water, so I kind of highly doubt that some of it's not essentially hitting the lawn. Their consumption level for the number of residents, I mean, they're comparable to Turin, and their water volume consumption, I believe, is about 10,000 cubes more per year. Now, take that a little bit into perspective as well, in the fact that the Huntsville School is also pulling off of that water co-op. Yes, they are one of the water co-op customers.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the base rate is gonna be, what we're gonna be proposing to them is $44.24. Is it then limit to how much they can use, or is that on top of that?
So just a small correction on that, John did the calculation there. It's approximately $38 as a flat fee. 44 is basically what all of our other hamlets are paying. So Turin, Diamond City, Shaughnessy, Monarch are all paying the flat fee of $44. So they'd be paying the flat fee, and then they would be paying for all their consumption on top of that. Now, the Water Association out there has talked to us about putting in water meters, because currently right now they basically do not have any water meters on any of their users. So basically they are just paying for the bulk of all the water, and then they are charging accordingly based on the water consumption.
Yeah.
But that portion is outside of our purview. We are not charging them. We are only charging them currently right now for just the cost of water through the pipeline.
Good, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the question was asked, do they use LNID water for their lawns and everything like that? And if they would be having two systems there, because they would have to have a separate line to do that one. Otherwise, you cannot mix them up.
Correct, yes. I mean, this is potable water is what we're servicing.
Do they have the two different lines?
We don't have record of that, so I do not know.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the $44 that a regular hamlet would be paying for capital replacement and costs to 38. $6 spread to put pipes in the ground and maintain them. That doesn't seem like a realistic replacement cost for our other hamlets. Do you follow? Seems like we're over on Iron Springs, or we're under on our other hamlets.
There is a very good potential that we may be under on some of our other areas. I am basing the Iron Springs fee off of what I did as far as a cost evaluation based on what we've been, we track all of our billable, essentially our billable hours, what our operators actually provide. And when I broke that down, that's where I base that $1,000 fee off of. One of the things that I am going to be diving deeper into in 2023 is whether or not we do have full capital cost recovery essentially built into all of our fees going ahead, right?
That very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
After all of that, I'd like to move that bylaw
Oh,
23.
John, hold on. Were you done, Jeremy? Were you done the report in its entirety?
More or less, I mean, I knew the discussion questions were gonna be around the background information. I did propose some alternatives. I mean, there's always we can always change what that percentage rate is. I mean, we did work this into our current budget as far as it is right now. But that's at council's purview essentially, whether or not they wanna increase those fees by the 2% or whether they wanna make it 1% or any other number.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, maybe just questions. Okay. Morris or Lauren and then Morris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can we talk about something other than water? Can we talk about garbage for a second?
You bet.
Good, okay. So I've had a couple of questions asked of me from Group Country Residentials, and they don't have garbage collection. They gotta take it over to the transfer station. So from what they're telling me, they're based on their assessment is how much they get charged per month for a garbage or a transfer station fee. What they're saying to me is it's way cheaper for us to hire a private individual to put a bin at the end of the alley or the street or wherever and dump their garbage in it and they haul it away once a week. They would prefer to do that than rather pay the assessed value for garbage collection. Is that something you could look into?
I could look into that. I just want to clarify a portion on that is with the waste commission is essentially there is based on all the residents of the municipality. We charge it or we put a fee in essentially as a requisition fee based on every individual. And I believe it's roughly $60 per year.
Well, it is, and it shows up on their tax notice, so it does depend on the assessment.
Okay.
So what they're saying to me is they're paying more because if their value of a house is $1 million versus, a rural acreage might only be 300 or 400,000. So they say it'd be cheaper to do it the other way. Anyway.
Okay, sorry, Lauren, Councillor Hickey, I was unaware that that requisition there was a assessment portion with that garbage collection rate, so I will definitely take a look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else, Lauren?
That's good, thank you.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as I know, for what they charge for the water and also for some of the hamlets, but on the wastewater end of it down there, it's somewhat subsidized by the rest of the ratepayers in the county, because if they were to collect the replacement cost and everything else on the wastewater and the water in the hamlets down there, it should be quite a bit higher. So, I think it's a good deal for a lot of the residents in the hamlets, and I think the increases what's being asked on here is well in line. Thank you.
Thanks, Morris.
I just have one more portion just to add to the conversation on the Iron Springs portion. Now, I did put this item 7H in there as an option. I have been somewhat unsuccessful over the last 6 months getting them to sign up with a service agreement that I would have similar to the South Co-op and the North Co-op, and that's why I'm proposing the fee within the bylaw, because then if it's within the bylaw, then it's something that I can firmly charge, versus currently right now, I can't get them to agree to a service agreement.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you billing them for our testing and water master services at this current time?
Currently, it hasn't happened in as long as the association has been around.
Okay, so I fully support that we recover that cost in one manner or other, whether they pay it up front and it's not part of the bylaw and they just here's fee for service, or it's built in either way.
Klaus?
Just a question here that, would they be willing to join the North Co-op, or is that not possible?
Their infrastructure comes straight off of the North County water line. Could they become part of that co-op association? They would essentially, there would have to be a license transfer in order for that to happen, essentially. Or sorry, no, let me correct that. not a license transfer, they would have to do some kind of agreement with the North Co-op essentially to become a customer association.
Because for simplifying things, that would make it a lot easier that we don't have to deal separately with a different association again. I thought that would probably be, if their costs would not, their costs would probably go up a little bit because of that probably, and that maybe is the reason why they wouldn't be, but otherwise, I think that that would be a better solution than that they're just with a little group there on their own.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That might be a good solution, but that's kind of outside our purview at this point in time when we're dealing with the rates, because we have to deal with what is in front of us right now.
Correct.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So would it be feasible to put another option on the table, to have them go at the same rate as the other hamlets and dissolve the co-op? Or are we looking at taking on some infrastructure that we could see some hidden treasures in? Or, I mean, you never know. But for them, for $6 a month, it doesn't seem to be that feasible.
This is a larger overall question of water strategy in the area, because this is something that not just with the Iron Springs Co-op, because I've asked them, I've said, what's your capital replacement plan essentially for when this infrastructure is done? And that's a blank. But similarly, this is the same question I posed to the North Co-op and the South Co-op, and I've said, how do you propose to replace your infrastructure at whatever point down the road? And they say, well, we have reserves. And I'm like, but your reserves are not enough to do anything right now. So they would not have the reserve values available to essentially replace any infrastructure in the long term. Maybe a portion, 10%, 20%. I don't know exactly what that number would be, but that is one of the overall concerns with the regional water co-ops is at some point down the road, water line infrastructure, it's not like roads, you can't recondition it or rehab it or overlay it or something like that. I mean, with water lines, once they hit the end of the lifespan, it's brand new infrastructure. Sometimes stacked on top, but is brand new infrastructure.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This particularly Iron Springs and even other ones, it's not really our problem to worry about their capital replacement. Right now, we're trying to make sure that we're recovering our costs. Yes, we just discovered that they're out there and we've been servicing them at no charge. Congratulations, you guys got 40 years free, and let's just work on getting their cost recovery. North Co-op, if they want to join it, you know what, they could have an agreement ready for next year, and that we don't, you know, maybe that won't be in next year, but for the interim, I think this is a reasonable solution.
Thanks, Eric. Any further discussion?
Well, just a comment, Mr. Chairman, like, I remember really well yet when we did the utilities in the town, the hamlet of ADJOURN down there, and that was also a lot of pavement, but also a lot of the utility lines, plus we put in a wastewater lagoon and whatever, and we charged that basically back to the residents, and they had options down there, and I think the first option was they could pay it in a lump sum. I think it was $15,000 or $16,000 or something like that, or they could pay it over 25 years or 30 years. I can't remember exactly days, but they did pay for it, Aaron, like when it needs replacement, yes, the residents over there would have to pick up the tab the way we have been doing it. And ADJOURN, we first everybody was in favor, and then by the time the high hose came in the town there, that's when we had a big revolt down there. They were not going to pay that or whatever, and there was a group of 15 people, I believe, Lauren, you remember? But anyways, we went ahead anyways, and that group finally, they put it to rest, and afterwards they said that was the best thing ever happened.
Would you like to?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-004, the 2023 utility rates be read for the first time as amended.
Do you have a question?
Yes. I got one more question. Would it be wise to, and we're still in negotiations constantly with the co-ops. I know these things are being brought forward, but what are we doing right now at the moment that we're moving ahead with all the questions that we had here?
Go ahead, yeah.
As council knows, this has been ongoing for quite some time. There now are some outstanding FOIP requests from the co-op that is slowing down our negotiation process.
John has moved that bylaw 23-004, 2023 utility rates be read a first time as amended. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mark?
I would like to move that bylaw 23-004-2023 utility rates be read a second time.
Mark has moved that bylaw 23-004, the 2023 utility rates be read a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Consideration. Eric?
I'd like to move that council consider reading, third reading of bylaw 23-004, 2023 utility rates.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved the recommendation that council consider the third reading of bylaw 23-004, 2023 utility rates. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And third reading. John?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-004, the 2023 utility rates, be read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved that bylaw 23-004, the 2023 utility rates be read a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, council.
Move down in our agenda to item G 4.1, sponsorship request, Rotary Club of Lethbridge East, $10,000 agricultural scholarship program. And we have our communications coordinator, Maddie Watson, here to present. Morning, Maddie.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, council. An email was received from the organizing committee of the 5th annual Rotary Ag Scholarship Program requesting support from Lethbridge County in the form of a sponsorship. The scholarship is open to students in southern Alberta who have completed at least 2 years of an agriculturally related post-secondary program. The organizing committee hopes to award at least 2 scholarships in 2023, dependent on sponsorships received. Recipients will be recognized at a gala on March 2nd, 2023. Sponsorship levels range from $1,000 to $10,000, and each level includes recognition at the gala and the Rotary's website, as well as tickets to the event. Members of council have attended the scholarship gala in the past, but the county has not provided sponsorship. In 2019, 3 members attended. In 2020, 4 members attended. And in 2021, I believe there was no in-person event due to the COVID restrictions. Financial impact, if council did decide to provide a sponsorship, the levels range from, as I said, $1,000 to $10,000 in $2,500 increments. Council may decide to use the council discretionary reserve to provide a sponsorship for the event which supports agriculture. So administration's recommendation is that council determine whether Lethbridge County will provide a sponsorship for the Rotary Club of Lethbridge East's $10,000 agricultural scholarship program in 2023.
Thank you, Maddie. Discussion from council. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having sat on our own scholarship committee this past year, I see the value of that. I appreciate the value of the service groups in our communities. Lethbridge East is focused out of Lethbridge. Their criteria is based on southern Alberta, whereas I think for the county, we focus on our residents. The discussion that came up this year from our committee, or the selection process, was that we were finding more kids or more students that were interested. I think there's more value if we're going to support a scholarship, that we look after our own scholarship within the county. There's other, Rotary has, they're reaching out to us. There's other organizations and corporations that are supporting them. Their scholarships, as I understand, they awarded 2 $10,000 scholarships, which in my mind is great for the 2 kids that get it, but there could be others. If we had upped ours to $2,000 and put these dollars, if we had the dollars available, my recommendation would be we put that into our own scholarship and reevaluate and look at our criteria and also promote and market it more. But I think there's enough students within our boundaries that would benefit from this. And like I say, that's where I think our dollars should be going, not to be put forward to another scholarship that has a lot more support. So I wouldn't support supporting this or sponsoring this event.
Thank you, Mark. Any other discussion from council? John? And then Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate and understand what the Rotary Club is looking at doing and acknowledge that they do very good things for the area. But I would concur with Councillor Sayers that, you know, if this is something that we're looking at putting substantial funds to, that we have our own program and scholarships in place, and we may have the ability to help quite a few more of our county citizens and students and help them pursue their agricultural goals by doing it in-house and just expanding our own program.
Thank you, John. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would concur with everything that's been said. I think both Mark and John bring up some valued points, and I would be more in favor of expanding our current scholarship program and opening up to a wider variety of people, because I think we should look after county residents first and foremost.
Thank you, Lauren. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I hear that there, I think we have some consensus, and therefore I don't believe we really need a motion, unless you'd like to proceed otherwise. Yes, Sam.
Through you, Chair Campbell, I think we'll just send a letter back just explaining our position, so that we have had a request, so administration will send a letter back making sure that they know that it's been answered and that council has debated it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much, Maddie.
Thank you, council.
G4.2, request for a letter of support, the Horsefly Emergency Spillway Project. And again, we have Devin Teely, our infrastructure manager. Devin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Horsefly Regional Emergency Spillway Project, as many projects, has seen significant inflationary pressures and cost increases. For phases 1, 2, and 3, these inflationary increases are looking at about $12.5 million in extra funding needed to complete these projects. The Municipal District of Taber has sent a letter to Premier Danielle Smith requesting the province cover this shortfall. And what they are requesting from the county council is a letter of support to go along with this. Well, I guess the letter has already been sent, but getting all the members of the committee to send a letter of support to ask for additional funds from the province to support this project and the $12.5 million shortfall. Phase 1 is currently under construction. Reeve Campbell and I did attend a meeting last fall regarding the shortfall. Then it was decided that funds from phase 2 and 3 would cover the deficit for phase 1 just to get things going. It's my understanding that the inflationary increases, that cost is going to be a request of the province, but the other deficit will be requested through the funding authorities, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Reeve Campbell, but that's how I understand it. So it's a $12.5 million request from the province. This is simply a letter from the county supporting that request. It's not committing the county to any additional funding. It's simply trying to get that funding from the province. Like I said, Reeve Harris did send a letter to Reeve Campbell outlining all the costs and the reasoning for this. So if there's anything you'd like to add, Reeve Campbell, that I may have missed, please do so. But that's in a nutshell what the committee is asking for at this time.
Thank you, Devin. And I think it was indicated to us, both through this process with the Stormwater Drainage Committee, as well as just in discussions with the province, that the province does have an appetite to at least consider some of these requests, given the rate of inflation. So there has been encouragement from the province to at least make the application. There hasn't been an indication that all those requests will be fulfilled, but we have been encouraged to at least make that request. Is that fair, Devin?
Absolutely.
Any questions? If not, John? Or sorry, Lauren?
I was just gonna make a motion
Go
that
ahead.
the Lethbridge County send a letter of support for the additional funding request to the government offices which apply. I don't know, would you send it to everybody again, or is it to Daniel Smith?
The letter was addressed to Danielle Smith, and I'd have to read through the letter that Reeve Harris sent to us, but I would expect that these letters of support would go to her and applicable ministries.
CC. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved a recommendation to draft a letter under the Reeves signature supporting the Municipal District of Tabor's in search of additional funds to offset inflationary increases to Phase 2 and 3 of the Horsefly Regional Emergency Spillway Project. Any further discussion? I will call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you, Council.
Moving down to our two additions, G4.3 land acknowledgement. Ann? Or I can start, I guess, if you'd like.
I'll come.
The reason that I requested Ann to add this, as you will remember early on in our term, as the chair, I did use a brief land acknowledgement for several meetings, several months. I thought that, as the chair, I thought that was within my purview to do that. In reflection, I realized that it probably wasn't right of me, as we as council hadn't discussed that, and I think that that should be something that is a larger discussion and not just to council, but pertains to the county as a whole. I guess my rationale for bringing this forward, I've been asked on several occasions why we don't have a land acknowledgement, and I'm a believer that the longer you don't do something, the more it looks like you're not doing something. So I thought it was prudent that we have that discussion, and I asked Ann to add it to the agenda today.
Yes, and as somebody who in my previous municipality, we had the first committee of a municipal council on truth and reconciliation. It is something that we brought forward into our council chambers. It is part of the broader scope of our relationship, and I do think it is fairly standard right across council chambers across the country. So that would be my recommendation, that
And
it is an acknowledgement.
My thought was, if there was an appetite from council, that from this, we could pass a resolution today, potentially directing administration to go down that process of drafting something that was appropriate for our municipality. If, like I say, if that was the appetite of council. Any questions, discussion? Mark?
Thank you, Reeve Campbell. Yeah, I would support that. I think that with the whole truth and reconciliation process, starting to have a better understanding of the educational piece of this, I think it's important that we sort of align ourselves with the rest of the other councils across the province, and also given the fact of the land that we're actually sitting on and the history that's here. So I think that would be the appropriate thing to do.
Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How do we pay service to someone or to something historical? How do we truly acknowledge it? And lip service is not acknowledgement. We have had members of council attend truth and reconciliation training. We attend blanket exercises and through a variety of action. And are we doing a service to truth and reconciliation by paying it lip service?
Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at this, yeah, a little bit different, and I'm just looking at not only our country, I'm looking at our southern neighbors that were actually in the same boat. We're looking at South America. We're looking at Europe, which started with some stuff, and I don't see any of the other ones having the same kind of I'm not actually talking about the truth of reconciliation, because that is a thing that we do not deny. But I do think that in order to do this, and Eric did say that, right? If it's only lip service, why are we doing it? If we're only doing it for political reasons, I cannot support it.
Mark?
I'd respectfully disagree that it's lip service. If you speak to some of the elders in the community, and it means something to them. It means something to the residential school survivors we hear about and speak to. So I would really strongly disagree that this is lip service. I know I've heard that argument before and as a discussion point. I don't see it that way at all. I think it's just the first step, and it's a small step to recognize that we are supportive of the Truth and Reconciliation piece and working with the Indigenous community in our area. So I guess I see it differently, but I understand where Eric's coming from. And Klaus, I've had that. In some instances, it absolutely is just lip service, but I don't think in this case, if it's done properly and appropriately, and we continue to engage with the Indigenous community in our area, I think we make it meaningful, and that's how that operates. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just out of curiosity, what exactly do you see, or how do you see approaching this, I guess? Like, how do you bring this to actually mean something? Like, how do you go about a process, or what would the process be, I guess?
In past, we've had actually a committee of council being part of Truth and Reconciliation, where we, as a council, looked at what was under our purview, the calls to action that came out of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And this is just in my experience at a past committee, or past council, past municipality. We had 29 First Nation Indigenous neighbors, so we had a lot of relations with them. In this instance, we actually had a committee, and we put forward lobbying to the government for the calls to action that we had any kind of oversight of. And the ones that were in the federal government, we lobbied for those as well. Some of it was finding graves, it was returning art, so there was all these things that were done under that committee. So I don't know the extent of what council here wants. I think the acknowledgement at the beginning, the land acknowledgement, I do agree with Councillor Sayers. It does mean something to the First Nations. We currently have economic development projects right now with some Indigenous partners, and it does mean something when it is said in the council chambers at the beginning of the council meeting. And as for the depth of the relationship and the committee, that's all up to council if they want to set something like that up.
Anything further? Would council like to proceed? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I believe it has value, and I think the fact that if we actually recognize what has occurred means a great deal to our Indigenous neighbors, and I would be in favor of moving forward to set up a committee and see exactly where we go or how we present it in the future. And I would make that a motion if you like.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren is,
You can wordsmith it how you want.
so maybe just to create a committee then, and then the committee could then, okay. Lauren has moved to create a committee of council. Help me, Lauren.
I think just to create a committee of council and I think administration to move forward on presenting a truth and reconciliation platform that the county would operate out of or from.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Does that work, Candace? Yeah, okay, thank you. Lauren has made that motion. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Moving down to our second edition, GH4 CAO recruitment. Do you want me to start on that as well, Ann?
Sure.
And just prepared a few notes for me here. As you're aware, CAO Mitchell's last day at Lethbridge County will be January 31st, 2023. Council would like the public to be aware that we as council will be handling the hiring of her replacement in-house, and that the ad for that posting will be out hopefully by the end of this week. Larry Randall, the Director of Community Services, will be acting as our interim CAO effective February 1st, 2023, until the position has been filled. Council and I would like to thank Mr. Randall and the members of the senior leadership team and all staff who are stepping up during this transition. That's a little bit formal, but obviously thank you to Larry. Ann and I had a brief conversation with Larry, and he was more than willing to step up at this time of transition for us. I'd like to thank Ann for her willingness to help council essentially close off what needed to be closed off before your departure. I think it was important that we highlight the difference between an acting and an interim, which I think maybe Ann will touch on.
Yes.
But just thank you, Larry, for stepping up at this time. We appreciate that very much, and I would turn to you, Ann.
Yep. I just want to say thank you, everybody. I'm not going to get emotional because it's hard. This is my last one. But Larry will be acting as normally when I'm gone if somebody steps in, and most members of the senior leadership team do that on a rotational basis. Larry will actually be pulled away from his duties as Director of Community Services, so the duties will be shared. Larry will still be responsible for some, but the senior leadership team is picking up the slack, so we appreciate it from the senior leadership team as well. And I just want to thank council. It's been a phenomenal 5 years. Almost 5.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we do have a proposed motion then. Is this the correct time, Ann?
Yeah.
We do have a proposed motion that County Council appoint Larry Randall as the interim Chief Administrative Officer effective February 1st, 2023 until the position of Chief Administrative Officer is filled.
Okay.
Lauren?
I would move that if you'd like somebody to move it.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to repeat it all, though.
I think, yeah. Thank you, Candace. Is there any further discussion? So Lauren has moved that County Council appoint Larry Randall as the interim Chief Administrative Officer effective February 1st, 2023, and until the position of Chief Administrative Officer is filled.
If I may, just quickly, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Council, I greatly appreciate this opportunity to step in, and I won't say fill Ann's shoes, because I don't think anybody can do that, but to hold the reins and keep things moving along for Lethbridge County to the best of my ability. I have a great working relationship with all of council for which I am grateful, and I see that continuing. And of course, as Ann has alluded to, we have a great senior management team at Lethbridge County and staff generally, and I look forward to their support and continuing to work with them. And it should be an exciting 3 to 4 months here, or somewhere thereabouts, until
8 to
the
9.
position, yeah, 8 to 9, 3 to 4 times 2, whatever, until the position is filled on a permanent basis. But again, I'm honored and look forward to this opportunity, and will embrace it with all I have, and we'll go from there. So exciting times. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, and I do want to thank council, because we have been so progressive, I believe, and in the 5 years since I've been here, we have gotten a lot done. So I'm really proud of that, along with staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
So we do have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, I would call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Ann. And, just for the public's benefit, like I said in that brief blurb there, we're fortunate in the sense that we have some 2 counselors who have been through this process multiple times. I know Claus and I, as well as Morris and Lauren, we went through this process when we hired Ann. That was one of our first tasks coming on. We're fortunate in the sense that we do have able staff at SLT that can step up and we fill that role comfortably in the meantime, so we didn't feel it necessary to go outside for an interim from outside the organization. And as far as the process goes, I think we have the skills and what we need to do a really good job of this process. I'm thankful for the backup of staff for handling some of the more technical details. That's greatly appreciated. And staff also acknowledges that, council also acknowledges that while we take this challenge on now, if there are changes or we do need to detour and we do need some professional help or other outside help, I think council is aware that there's multiple services out there in the world that can help us with that. And if and when that time comes, council will definitely entertain that possibility. But for the time being, we feel confident, and I personally am thankful for the support of council as we go down this road. With the posting, I think it goes without saying that I think this is a great place to live, a great place to work. Anne and her staff have really raised the bar over the last almost 5 years. And I think with the positive influence of council and the current culture that's here, I think this is a great place to work. And I'm sure that we'll receive some really top shelf applicants, and I'm looking forward to going through that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more item on our open session in our correspondence. You do have a correspondence in front of you from Rocky View County. Anne, did you want to touch on this or?
No. It was something that was just received in the last couple of days, and it looks like it's support for the challenges that we're having the same challenges as Rocky View with the Alberta Utilities Commission. So it's up to council whether they want to decide to become part of this or to support this initiative.
Yeah, as Anne noted, so obviously it revolves around land use decisions, land use planning decisions, and some other municipalities throughout the province have felt some of the challenges when it comes to alternative energy, namely solar, and some of the challenges we're facing between the regulator, the province, and the municipalities. And there is a request or an opportunity, I guess, to join this advocacy campaign. The deadline they placed on it was February 3rd, to at least give our intent to join this campaign. I would open it up to council for any questions or discussion. Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we had the Agriculture Service Board meeting in the past last year, and we did bring a resolution forward for that, if I'm not mistaken, Eric and Morris. Yeah. So that is going to move on to the provincial one then.
Okay. Anything further on this? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a consultant allocating up to $10,000 to advocate to the government. I'm guessing each county's share will be fairly small, but is there value in it above and beyond what's the conversations are ongoing, the discussions are at RMA, they're kind of all around. The only benefit I see is if there gets to be a unified front across counties, more so than just a consultant doing it, and maybe that's what the consultant will be doing, trying to unify and get more counties together. Yeah, kind of a toss-up, but if we're only footing a small part of the bill, 1/10 or something, then I'd say, yeah, you know what, every bit could potentially help.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I read it, they're basically asking every municipality to ante up $10,000 each.
Yeah, that would also be my interpretation, yeah. Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I would like to go this route. This is just my personal opinion. I think that we got to go through the official, the legal system that we have in place to move on with things like this. And I think the RMA is our is our place to be, and I think it is like if we can get that one off rolling in the RMA, like through because we're going to be going there next week to the Agricultural Service Board meeting in Grand Prairie, and if we bring this motion forward, I'm sure there's going to be lots of support for that, and I think that we should be working through the RMA with this and not going to take it sidelines.
Thanks, Klaus. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've always struggled with questions about whether or not you hire a professional lobbyist, because that's essentially what we're talking about here. And the question in front of us really is, what is more effective dealing with and trying to affect change on this, because change does need to happen with it. Is it one person that is constantly in the ear of the people that make these decisions, or is it a plethora of multiple people that are constantly in the ear of the people that have the ability to make the change? I don't know that I have the right answer with that or the right thought on that, but I think that really is the crux to the question, is whether or not a professional lobbyist that has the backing of multiple municipalities is the right thing to do. On the surface, I believe and would hope to believe that our higher levels of government would put more weight on multiple municipalities approaching them individually and constantly talking about the same thing with them. It would be a better way to affect change. But possibly, CAO Mitchell, you might have some insight on what might be the more effective route to take with this.
I agree with what you were saying about the $10,000. I do think it's per municipality. I think the likelihood of a lobby would be, the good thing about the lobbyist would be that it would be that specific issue. And sometimes they have insight into government chambers that we don't. However, tomorrow we are attending Foothills Little Bow, and I think this is something that should go through that process and the RMA process, and that way the 69 counties in Alberta could move it forward. That's what I think.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do agree with following the proper process most of the time, but if you want results, if the person only has one thing on their plate and they can get in front of the minister, you do get advanced a little further, because the RMA typically has a dozen things or more that they've selected to present to the government, and depends how they're weighted as to how far they get along that process. So that's just an awareness you have to weigh out eventually.
Thank you, Lauren. Any further discussion? Any direction council would like to give at this time? Go ahead, John.
I think at this point, this is sort of in its infancy, and I think that we should adopt this for information and put some more thought and discussion into it, and potentially have administration come back with some pros and cons on this.
Okay.
Okay.
Good, Ann?
Good.
Okay, thank you. With that, that concludes the public portion of our meeting. We do have a closed session item, personnel matter, FOIP Section 19, confidential evaluations. Moving forward in your agendas, you will see this added to our agendas moving forward, just giving us that opportunity to have those discussions. Whether we utilize it or not will be at our discretion at the meetings, but just if you see that on the agenda moving forward.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone. Who would like to move to go into a closed session? Mark?
Move that we go into closed session.
Mark has moved to enter a closed session. Any discussion?